What's up, creepers and geekers? Chris, the Atari Creep. How is everyone doing today? I wanted to talk about Pac-Man for the Atari 2600 because I'm pretty excited that we're finally going to get a re-release of this version of Pac-Man. I don't care how you feel about it. Honestly, it's the Pac-Man I had. It's the one I'm most nostalgic for. I even use the sounds in my intro. So I wanted to talk about it again. But you know what? There's nothing I'm going to be able to say that I haven't already said before in a video about this game. So you know what? I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to play some Pac-Man. Now, mind you, I'm not a very good maze-style game guy. I'm not very good at it. So you're not going to see me get too far. But I'm going to play the game. And down the bottom corner, I'm going to let past me tell you all about this game. And from a video, I think it was called, was Pac-Man bad or just disappointing? Or something to that effect. So without further any fucking yapping, I'm going to try not to grunt and groan so you can hear past me. Here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm using a real joystick and my Atari 2600 Vader model. And my controller doesn't work. Okay, so I found another controller. It's not the one I recently refurbished. I have no idea what happened to that one. So this one kind of works. This is one I need to actually refurbish. So remember, I'm not good at this as it is. Fuck! Not paying attention. Alright, pass, Chris. Let's talk about it, buddy.
So let's start off. Pac-Man was released in October of 1980. Wow, I was 5 years old. 1980 in the arcades, and it took on a life of its own. It was probably one of the first, I guess, video game mascots I can remember. I mean, they put Pac-Man on everything. It had a hit single, Pac-Man Fever. Pac-Man, it just took the world by storm. I mean, even today, you can still buy a ton of Pac-Man items. I mean, it was inevitable that it would eventually end up on a home console. So Atari decided to get their greasy little fingers on the rights to it. In true Atari fashion, they gave the programming job to a guy named Todd Fry, I think his name was. And they gave him about, I don't know, 27 minutes to write it up, program it, package it, and get it out into the stores. And it was even rumored that it was the prototype that was actually released. And there were other people within Atari looking at Ray Kazar, the guy who owned Atari at the time, saying, look, do not release this. People are going to get pissed off. But Ray Kazar didn't have any faith in the video games, the vision of Atari to begin with. He wanted to focus on home computers. They made about 12 million copies of it. And that was far more, considerably more units than they had Atari 2600s out there. And at first you'd look at that and say, well, that's kind of stupid. What were they thinking? But if you look back in Atari's history, you gotta remember the first couple of years, Atari wasn't really doing the greatest with the VCS, which turned into the 2600. But once Space Invaders hit, 2600 VCS consoles were being sold, and they went like wildfire. You couldn't even keep them on the shelves. So I guess in a way, maybe they were thinking that was the case. You know, this is a huge hit, Pac-Man, and people are gonna want to play Pac-Man at home. And if they don't have an Atari, they have no choice but to buy an Atari. So the port boosted the video game industry's presence in retail, okay? Following the 2600 port, Pac-Man arcade sequels started coming about, and they ended up selling 7 million copies, and at the time, that was probably the largest number of games sold for any system, period. Still the number one game sold for Atari itself, the 2600. So ironically, it did sell quite well. Not as well as they were hoping, though. This is once people plugged it in. Now, this is where my point of view differs. Most people plugged in and started playing it were like, this sucks. A lot of people sent it back. Whereas I feel that they were just more disappointed in what came out. I had already at that point registered the idea that we will never have an arcade quality anything with the Atari. I was already used to that. As long as the gameplay was good, I was happy. So when I finally got my hands on Pac-Man and plugged it in, I said, wow, this is different. And even at the time, as a 7-year-old kid, I knew this was like the idea of Pac-Man, but it was like they ripped the soul out of it. But the gameplay was there. You know, you were a little round thing running around, gobbling up dots, avoiding ghosts. Pushed left, it went left. You pushed up, it went up. You pushed right, it went right. Down, same, you know. There were a few problems. There was flickering ghosts, and they couldn't have all 4 ghosts on the screen at the same time. So they would flicker all over the place to keep the screen pretty constant. I personally don't see it as that big. I didn't see it as a problem then. A lot of people were annoyed by the fact there weren't any fruit. Instead, what we got was, in our area, what we call a block of cheese. As retro guys generally have this consensus, and it's graphics don't matter as long as the gameplay is there. And if you ask me, the gameplay is there. It's there 100%. There are some spots where you can get stuck, like if you go through the tunnels at the top and the bottom. I've gotten locked up in there. And again, the ghost flickering all over the place can cause an issue here and there. But for the most part, the gameplay is there, and if you were to fail at anything in the game, it was based off of your skill or your level of paying attention to what was going on the screen, and not so much the game's poor mechanics. So, I mean, if you ask me, that makes it a decent game. This is going to seem like an odd one, and I think one other YouTuber had said it, and that's what actually put that seed into my mind. Pac-Man now has an eyeball. He didn't have an eyeball before. And I guess that one little thing just made it like a personal, I guess not for me, but for anyone who owned the console. Like, I have a version of Pac-Man where he actually has an eyeball and he's not just a yellow blob. Was I disappointed when I seen it? No, I wasn't disappointed. I was just happy to be playing the idea of Pac-Man. So let's go back to one of my initial thoughts. Is it a bad game versus was it just disappointing? If you come down to just the bones of it, it's not a bad game. It plays. It's simple. You can understand what's going on. And the mechanics are there. I think people were just more disappointed. The colors were different. Pac-Man looked different. The way he moved around the board was different. The dots were dashes. The sounds were horrible. I'm not gonna lie. Some of the sounds are nostalgic to me only because of when I was playing it. That boot up two-tone do-it. I get goosebumps when I hear that still. But I will say, when he's running around that maze making that gut, that's annoying as hell. I do like the sound of him eating a ghost. I don't know why. I've always thought that was awesome. But it was just, I guess it was too different from the original Pac-Man. And that's where everybody kind of went with the idea that it was a bad game. Do you really hate it? Or do you just choose not to play? Because there are better ports out there. Are you with the main group of people who just think it's the most horrible game of all time? You know, leave your comments down below. Let me know. I would recommend popping it in and giving it about a half hour. Play it. And let me know if the points I just made resonate with you at all. I'm not saying you have to fall in love with it. I'm not saying that you're going to. But at least your point of view will change and you won't be with the consensus that it's a horrible game. Because it really isn't. It's just disappointing.